He's back. Robert Downey Jr. has returned to the MCU. So the MCU panel in Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con 2024 did not disappoint. We got some Captain America Brave New World news, we got an update on Thunderbolts finally, we got to see the Fantastic Car during the Fantastic Four segment, but Marvel closed the show out with news on the next two Avengers films, previously known as Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. They announced that Anthony and Joe Russo would be returning to the MCU as directors, and it's nice to see them back, especially now that we're so far removed from Avengers Endgame. But they didn't come without news. Tying things back to the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom would be introduced in that film, and then he would transition to the big bad of the next Avengers films, now being called Avengers Doomsday. We were then treated to an army of Doctor Dooms marching on the main stage, and that's when the Russos said the following. There is one very important character that is required to do Secret Wars justice. If we're gonna bring Victor Von Doom to movie theaters worldwide, then I think we're going to need the greatest actor in the world to play that character. As proof of the unimaginable possibilities in the Marvel multiverse, we give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom. Then the army of Dooms parched down the center as another Doom, dressed in brighter garb than the rest, walks to the center stage. He looks at the crowd, he removes the Doom helmet. Who's under the mask? None other than the original face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Robert Downey Jr., the man who defined himself as the MCU's greatest hero, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. He is back and he will be one of Marvel's greatest villains. The question that is being flooded into our collective minds, is this version of Doctor Doom a variant of Tony Stark, or is he truly Victor Von Doom? What we do know is that the character will debut in Fantastic Four's first steps and will then graduate to primary villain of the next Avengers movie. This reminds me of how Phase 1 used Loki, and it's nice to see that. If this version of Doom is a Tony Stark variant, can you imagine the look on the Avengers' faces when they see Doom without his helmet for the first time? Because I guarantee you, it's not going to be the same reaction held by the people who were in attendance at Hall H. It's going to be devastating. One thing I would really like to see, if this is a variant, is a recreation of the cave scene from Iron Man, but instead of building the Iron Man Mark I, he's building the Doom armor, just for the parallel. New mask, same task. Robert Downey Jr. spoke this to the crowd in attendance, and now I guess there are two ways to interpret that statement. One is the literal. Robert Downey Jr. will be wearing a new mask or portraying a different character than the one he previously portrayed in the MCU. And then there's the subtextual. Assuming that this version of Doctor Doom is in fact a variant of Tony Stark, there are a few things we know about Tony's character that are cause for concern. His ego. An evil variant of Tony that shares Tony's ego would not tolerate failure, so expect this Doom to have contingencies upon contingencies, planning for every scenario. Tony is also obsessive. Since the Battle of New York, he wanted to build a suit of armor around the world, a globalized protection plan. This ultimately resulted in the creation of Ultron. Let's assume this Doctor Doom has similar motivation. He views himself as a savior. Ultron reasoned that the greatest threat to humanity was humanity itself. I believe an evil Tony variant would share that thought process, and he would assume that he knows best, and since he's one of the smartest men in the world, who's going to convince him otherwise? In his point of view, he would still be the good guy. No matter what atrocity he commits, he could always justify it to himself. To ensure humanity's longevity, there would be an acceptable amount of sacrifice. Tony's intellect is also a threat. If this variant is as smart, then we need to be wary of the technological advancements Tony made. Remember in Iron Man 3, Tony was able to build an army of Iron Man suits in his basement by himself. An evil variant with that same arsenal is a global superpower. Not to mention they would probably have a better weapon loadout than the suits that Tony built in Iron Man 3. And he would do this in the vein of global protection, just like Tony. New mask, same task. Since the announcement in Hall H, I've seen two different camps emerge. One filled with people who are genuinely excited about the return of Robert Downey Jr. and even more hype about the fact that he'll be Doctor Doom, and the other is filled with people who believe that Marvel hit the panic button, and it's not hard to see their point. Since Robert Downey Jr.'s departure from the MCU after Endgame, the franchise has entered a downward slope. Films are not performing well and being poorly received, like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and The Marvels. These films, along with Loki Season 1 and 2, have been leading us to the multiversal threat, Kang the Conqueror. Kang up to this point has been portrayed by Jonathan Majors, but due to a scandal and subsequent guilty verdict, the actor has been ousted from Hollywood at large. This left Marvel holding the bag. Their main antagonist, their next Thanos, was now untouchable. The obvious solution to this would be to recast the actor, and there were some names being touted like John Boyega, but he openly and loudly declined on social media, citing his previous experience with Disney on Star Wars as being unpleasant. Personally, I'm glad he declined. I don't think John Boyega is a good actor, certainly not on the level of Majors, but instead, Marvel is bringing back Robert Downey Jr. and shifting towards Doom. This makes everything leading up to Kang feel pointless. It also most likely has the added stress of having to rewrite upcoming projects like Fantastic Four and Avengers 2026 to be more Doom-centric. I'm not sure how far along Marvel was into Kang Dynasty as far as production, but I'm sure having to shift like this cost them time and money. This is also the second time Marvel has shown apprehension to recasting a role. When Chadwick Boseman died in 2020, Marvel made the choice not to recast the character. At the time, I agreed with their decision. His portrayal of T'Challa was one of the best castings in the MCU period. Living up to that would be difficult. But Major's portrayal of Kang, He Who Remains, and Victor Timely was fluid. He played that character different 3 times. He Who Remains was aloof but cunning. Kang was vicious and relentless, and Victor Timely was weak and conniving. Their one common thread was their genius level intellect. This makes recasting his role easier as there was no definitive Kang established. The threat of Kang was that there were so many variants that the Avengers would be fighting an unending army of evil geniuses. Shifting to Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom doesn't necessarily mean that they won't recast Kang, but even if they do, it means Doom is somehow a bigger threat which nursed the MCU's Kang, and possibly makes him unusable in the future. So the argument that Marvel hit the panic button has weight behind it. We won't really know how well this shift will work until Fantastic Four comes out in 2025, but the film already seems like it's bloated. We know Silver Surfer and Galactus will be in the film. Adding Robert Downey Jr. as Doom will take some focus off of them as antagonists, unless his role in that film is very small, but I can't see them doing that if they're setting him up to be a multiversal threat. So that's all we really know about Robert Downey Jr.'s return to the MCU. Personally, I'm excited to see him back. I love the idea of Victor Von Doom being a Tony Stark variant, but even if he's not, and this is an honest portrayal of Dr. Doom based on his comic book legacy, I think Robert Downey Jr. could do that fantastically. Either way, I don't think this is an L. But it's time for me to get out of your hair. Before I slide out, I gotta remind you, please hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. It will really go a long way to helping others find my content. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit that bell icon. And for everyone, please leave a comment so that we can have a discussion about today's topic. See you in the next one.